I think it's very unlikely, right? I mean, you did have 45 Republican senators vote to suggest that they didn't think it was appropriate to conduct a trial. So you can infer how likely it is that those folks will vote to convict.
In order to convict former President Trump, 17 Republicans would have to join with Democrats, but the odds of that happening are slim to none. Last time around, Utah's Mitt Romney was the only Republican senator who voted to convict him. Democrats will try to persuade other moderates like Toomey, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Ben Sasse. Senator Paul says the trial sets a dangerous precedent and highlights a double standard.
But I think if we're going to criminalize speech and somehow impeach everybody who says, oh, go fight to hear your voices heard, I mean, really, we ought to impeach Chuck Schumer then.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
Paul says Schumer's rhetoric was so bad that the Chief Justice had to make a public condemnation. Democrat Congresswoman Maxine Waters is also walking back her inflammatory remarks, claiming she didn't advocate for violence in this viral video.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
Now compare that to what President Trump said that sparked this new impeachment trial.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Constitutional law expert Alan Dershowitz, who represented the former president at his last trial, says the Trump team needs to focus on two things.
The Constitution doesn't authorize the removal or impeachment of a person who's no longer in office, whose term has expired. And if they argue that the speech was constitutionally protected, they will win.
Dershowitz says the Trump team shouldn't even mention the election, and that they should focus on proving why he didn't incite an insurrection, as Democrats and some in the media are claiming. Now, from what I'm hearing on Capitol Hill, it seems like this is going to be a speedy trial. It could wrap up by Friday, but if it doesn't, we will not see the trial continue Friday night into Saturday night, because Senator Chuck Schumer, the majority leader, has granted a request from one of President Trump's attorneys, David Schoen, to not conduct the trial on the Jewish Sabbath. Back to you.
Logan Raddick for us, and we'll also talk to Professor Dershowitz coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. Let's welcome in now Georgia Congressman Jody Hice. Congressman Hice is also the ranking member of the House Government Operations Subcommittee. Congressman, great to see you.
Great to see you, John. Thanks.
Well, let's focus first on what Congresswoman Cheney had to say about former President Trump and the future of the Republican Party. Here she was yesterday.
That is a person who does not have a role as a leader of our party going forward. We have to make sure that we are able to convey to the American voters we are the party of responsibility, we are the party of truth, that we actually can be trusted to handle the challenges this nation faces, like COVID, and that's going to require us to focus on substance and policy and issues going forward, but we should not be embracing the former president.
Did the Congresswoman undercut Kevin McCarthy with comments like that? It seems like this doesn't jibe with what we were told after the conference meeting last week.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we had a meeting last week to deal with this type of rhetoric coming from Liz Cheney, and I can absolutely tell you one person who is absolutely not the leader of the Republican Party, and that's Liz Cheney. She is having hard enough of a time just leading the Republican conference, and for her to continue making these type of outlandish comments is so unfortunate for our entire conference. Make no mistake, Donald Trump is, whether she likes it or not, still largely the face of the Republican Party, and his influence, his policies are going to continue leading the Republican Party, whether Liz Cheney likes it or not. And so she had best just get out of the way of the reality of what the Republican Party has come under the incredible leadership of Donald Trump.
She's effectively the spokesperson for the Republican Party in the House, right? I mean, that's what the House GOP conference chair, that's her job. There was a lot made about removing her from that position, but Kevin McCarthy backed her. How can she maintain that position when so many people disagree with her as you do?
Well, it's becoming more and more difficult for her to be respected as a leader. She continues to lose credibility look, there were only 10 within our conference who voted to impeach the president, she being one of them. How in the world does such a minority of the minority come out with these kinds of outlandish statements? The vast majority of Republicans in our conference, let alone Republicans throughout the entire nation, strongly support President Trump. And for her to continue to make these horrible comments is just, it's going to come back to bite her. She is kicking her political career right away. And she's going to earn every bit of it.
I know Donald Trump Jr. has been asked about his participation in the Wyoming primary. He says he's all about that. Also, we know Matt Gaetz is going to stay active in that as well. Now, I also want to talk about the impeachment and the strategy that are going to be employed by the defense and the prosecutors here. The Trump defense strategy may come down to dueling impeachment videos. Democrats say they want to make the case that former President Trump incited the riot by using his own words. Of course, we know there were other words in that speech, like peacefully and patriotically using your voices to protest here. But Trump's lead impeachment attorney, Bruce Castor, also suggested that he would use the Democrats' own words against them during the impeachment trial. We just heard a little bit of this from Logan in his report. Castor also told Fox News host Laura Ingraham that he will use videos from the Antifa riots and the Black Lives Matter protests from over the summer. So, you know, one thing that concerns me a little bit here, Congressman, is that people's words in the First Amendment, I think we've talked about this, they are basically on trial here as well. And if we start parsing words, I mean, I know we're trying to show some parity here. That's what they're trying to do. But if we start parsing words, isn't this dangerous for the First Amendment?
Well, it is dangerous. And the reality is the Democrats have been doing this for months. I mean, we have all watched for months on end as cities have been burning and businesses looted and individuals assaulted and police targeted. And all the while, the Democrats pointing their finger at those who are political opponents, condemning us for our speech when their inflammatory comments have been so much worse and have created much of the riots and violence that we've been watching for this past year all throughout our country. And now they're coming after to cancel and silence anyone who is a political opponent. This is frightening and should never be done in America. It never has been done in America. And for the Democrats to be taking this kind of step, I think it's going to backfire on them. I believe their own rhetoric. They're about to kick an anthill in this impeachment trial that is going to reveal their own hypocrisy and their own fiery rhetoric. And it's going to be very difficult for them to find a hiding place to get away from those kind of comments. Having
some vivid flashbacks about stepping in ant piles when I was a kid, Congressman. Nobody wants to do that. But, you know, one of the problems here is even if you question, you know, you bring this stuff up, you get shut down by so many members of the media. And that's what happened to Senator Rand Paul on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace. Here's that exchange.
Senator, you talk about other people who have said things, but, you know, there had been weeks of misrepresentations about the election. Then he called people to come to Washington. Then he talks about fighting like hell. People in the crowd are talking about going to the Capitol, and then they demand to find Speaker Pelosi and to hang Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States. Is that not incitement for insurrection?
It's not just that they want to criminalize speech, seemingly. It's that, you know, they only want to criminalize one kind of speech, Congressman.
Yeah, and the hypocrisy of this, I mean, look, you have, I'm opposed to all riots, and I condemn the ones on January 6th, just like I condemn the ones from BLM and Antifa all throughout the year. That is not the case with the Democrats. They embraced much of the rioting that took place all year long, all across American cities, Portland being highlighted as the most unbelievable one as we watched for over 100 days. But they said nothing. In fact, they were behind those things. Even this past weekend, Representative Bush was behind the rioting taking place in the jail in St. Louis. And yet, when you have the president calling on people to peacefully and patriotically march to the Capitol, and you have some thugs who break into the Capitol, somehow for the president to be responsible for that and for them to say that he incited such behavior. Look, what it's boiling down to is if you embrace the left-wing radical agenda in this country, then rioting, burning cities, assaulting people is okay with the Democrats. I mean, that's really what this boils down to. And the reality is the law applies to everyone. All rioting, all misbehavior, all assaulting of people is wrong and should be condemned regardless of which side may be responsible for doing so.
And it's a shame we have to keep repeating this. I know you believe this, I believe this, and I don't like to have to waste the time to say it, but we have to remind people of this because if you don't, then you leave it up to the other side, and we're all just a bunch of insurrectionists in their eyes. I also want to talk to you about something more important than all this COVID relief bill. Senior Democrats are scheduled to unveil a new tax credit today for struggling American families, and under their plan, Americans earning, most Americans would receive $3,600 for each child they have under the age of 6, $3,000 for every child they have between the ages of 6 and 17. And obviously some limits on this, but this sounds like a plan that a lot of people could get behind, but usually there's a catch. Is there a catch to this?
Well, look, the catch is this is the first major step towards socialism and the government paying people every month. Listen, you cannot pay people to replace their livelihoods. We have got to change the topic in this country from continuing to pay people to be at home, change the talking points from this type of thing to open the economy. The only way you deal with people's livelihood is enable them to work and to make a living.
The best way, Congressman, to help out parents is to get these kids back in school. So many school districts are still closed down now, and the unions really seem to be the ones pulling the strings here. So let's leave that aside. I do want to wrap up here some disturbing news. Texas Congressman Ron White has died after battling COVID-19. I know you worked with Congressman Wright there in Washington. He was just 67 years old, previously battled lung cancer. Just a few words on your memories of Congressman Wright.
Listen, Congressman Wright was an amazing man, gentle, kind, a servant. I mean, he's been the recipient of many awards, a Man of the Year. He worked with homeless people. He just absolutely the epitome of a servant, a public servant. And our thoughts and prayers go out to Susan, his dear wife, his family. He will be greatly, greatly missed. Just a class act in every sense of the word.
Well, we appreciate your time and your comments on Texas Congressman Ron White, who passed away at 67 after battling COVID and lung cancer previously. Congressman Hice, thank you so much. We appreciate it, sir. We'll talk to you soon.
Hi, Emma Reckenberg here. If you like this video, there's a whole lot more to see on Newsmax TV. You can watch for free right here on our YouTube live stream and be the first one here each time our experts break down real news. Just hit that subscribe button, ring the bell icon, and stay with us on America's fastest growing cable news channel, Newsmax TV.